Good morning, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Thursday. It is the second day of October, 2025. While Israel is shut down in recognition of their holiest day, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, three important stories are in the news that will have far-reaching consequences as far as last day's Bible prophecy is concerned. So let's get to them. First, from Israel Hayom website. Will Trump's plan push Iran to attack Israel? It's a fascinating story. We'll get into that. And then something similar here from Zero Hedge. Trump inks Article 5 style defense deal with Qatar after apology over Israel's Doha bombing. Why is the United States so interested in making Qatar secure and telling them that they're going to have their back as far as defense purposes are concerned? And that's another fascinating story and also has to do with something with Iran. And then finally, this is one that is so important from the Jerusalem Post. It's an analysis. Why are there no mass protests for Hamas to accept Trump's Gaza peace plan? It's an analysis there. Each of these stories needs to be seen together as a situation in the Middle East remains in a flux. But the last story in particular is crucial to understand with respect to how the Bible portrays our world at the time of the end. It's really a fascinating observation. We'll get to it in a bit. All right, let's go to the first story. Will Trump's plan push Iran to attack Israel? It's on the website Israel Hayom. The deal to end the war in Gaza could be interpreted in Tehran as an overarching strategic move directed at the Islamic Republic. Internal pressure on Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei to launch a surprise attack on Israel may now intensify. This is where the action is right now. Alongside examining the viability of Donald Trump's plan to end the war in Gaza, it is worth considering the implications for Iran and, accordingly, Tehran's expected response if the plan is implemented. On the surface, the proposal appears to improve Israel's strategic position. It is supposed to secure the release of all the hostages from Hamas, dismantle the terrorist organization's weapons infrastructure, and seemingly eliminate the need for Israel to occupy the Strip. Given Iran's conspiratorial mindset and Khamenei's deep suspicion of U.S. actions, Tehran is likely to view the plan as a move aimed squarely at undermining the regime. The leadership may suspect that Trump's plan is designed to complete the weakening of another arm of Iran's regional proxy network, namely Hamas. This would add to Hezbollah's current difficulties in Lebanon, the decline of the Shiite militias in Iraq, the collapse of the Assad regime in Syria. In Tehran's eyes, all of these point to the main goal of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Trump, namely toppling the Iranian regime. We've talked about that. There is real moves behind the scenes getting Khamenei out of there and the mullahs in the current regime and replacing with the late Shah's oldest son, Reza Pahlavi. And like I said, there's a huge push going on behind the scenes to do that because they realize, and this is not an exaggeration, companies and groups could make over $1 trillion, that's with a T, dollars in rebuilding the country of Iran if the Ayatollah and his ilk are removed. And so it's a lot of it's a financial motive, besides the fact of freeing the people there in Iran. Anyway, let's go on. Iran's state media has already framed Trump's proposal as an imperialist plan designed to perpetuate the occupation of Palestine. The plan threatens Iran because it explicitly weakens Hamas and its grip on Gaza. Should Hamas accept control of the Strip would pass to a technocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee responsible for day-to-day governance under the oversight of international transitional body, the Peace Council, led by Trump and joined by figures such as former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. The positive reception of the plan by Arab states and Israel undermines the regional policy Iran has tried to lead since Israel's attack in Qatar. At the Islamic summit in Doha, Tehran pushed for a unified front against Israel, urging not only condemnation but also harsh action, including economic and diplomatic boycotts. Trump's plan flips this strategy on its head. Now, Israel and key Arab states appear to be aligned, not opposed. Moreover, if Hamas rejects the plan, as it is expected to, the tacit approval from the United States and the indirect backing from the Arab states for Israel to occupy Gaza, runs counter to Iran's regional strategy. In other words, this is really, really bad for them on many fronts. So the question is now, well, how might Iran respond? Several factors fuel Tehran's opposition. That is, Khamenei's distrust of the Trump administration, Iran's desire to block a U.S.-led regional order, and its aim to leverage the swords of iron war and the Israeli attack in Qatar in particular to shape a pro-Iranian regional order. They've been trying to do this, like we've said for years and years, to have a pro-Iranian regional order with Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, with Syria, with the Islamic Jihad groups in Iraq, and the Houthis in Yemen, but it's all falling apart. That's the problem. And so, the from Iran's perspective, basically Trump's plan could pose dangerous consequences for its national security. Why? Well, Tehran is likely to attempt to pressure Arab states diplomatically to oppose the plan. It will seek consultations with Hamas on how to exploit it, using the proposal to stall Israel's military action. And we already talked about this. This is part of the way they work, the Hamas, so that we'll just keep stalling and stalling. Well, yeah, we'll accept it, and this and that, but it's not going to work this time. They even want to prevent a temporary Palestinian displacement. They want to stall the Israeli military action, pushing for Hamas or its allies to infiltrate proposed technocratic administration. In other words, what they'll probably do is say, all right, we'll accept this new technocratic administration, but we'll make sure Hamas and its allies are part of the ruling body. And this would not be out of the question simply because they play the long game, the long term. And if they realize that, look, for right now, Gaza is lost, we'll just have to regroup and, go underground, as it were, be part of this technical group, technological group, whatever you call it, technocratic group that runs it. And then in a few years, we can do it all over again. Even if Hamas ultimately rejects the proposal, Iran will likely try to reassure its leaders of the necessity of resistance, offsetting Hamas's concern about a strong Arab backing states have shown for the plan. Well, see, again, Iran's never got the Arab states backing them in their plan to destroy Israel. So ultimately, Trump's initiative appears to undercut, and this is the key here, this is insightful, undercut Hamas's most valuable leverage, namely, it demands the release of hostages up front while forcing disarmament. It also contradicts Hamas's strategy of leveraging the October 7th attack as a long term asset, even at the cost of losing control of Gaza. Despite mounting pressure from Arab leaders, Hamas is expected to reject the plan at the very least, or turn to Qatar to negotiate changes that would hollow it out. All right. So basically, as we continue to observe, it seems like further military action with Iran seems inevitable, given the circumstances and Iran's belligerence and its non-acceptance of reality. And this leads us to our next story, headline number 2. This is fascinating. Trump inks Article 5 style defense deal with Qatar after apology over Israel's Doha bombing. This is from Zero Hedge. The U.S. and Qatar have signed an unprecedented agreement, which is similar to Article 5 in NATO, in which such an attack on Qatar is considered a threat to the security of the U.S. The robust security guarantees are spelled out in a deal posted to the White House website on Wednesday. The United States shall regard any armed attack on the territory, sovereignty, or critical infrastructure of Qatar as a threat to the peace and security of the United States. In the event of such an attack, the United States shall take all lawful and appropriate measures, including diplomatic, economic, and if necessary, military, to defend the interests of the United States and of Qatar. This is a clear vow to guaranteeing the security and territorial integrity of the state of Qatar against external attack. Now, is this what the White House is calling an America First policy? That's the question here. Of course, the United States already has a significant military base, the sprawling Al Udeid Air Base located west of Doha, which is defended by Patriot missile batteries. But now, presumably, this American air defense shield will extend over the whole of the tiny oil and gas monarchy's territory. Already, the past year has seen active U.S. intercepts of missiles sent by Iran. And yes, last month's Israeli attack on Hamas office in Doha was allowed by the U.S. defenses. But this new major security deal appears part of Trump's regret to Qatar in the wake of the controversial attack by Israel, which killed 5 top Hamas negotiators and a Qatar security guard. Trump on Monday, while hosting Prime Minister Netanyahu, made him apologize to Qatar's leaders in a somewhat humiliating phone call and photo op later published by the White House. As for U.S.-Qatar relations, they were deepened especially during the decade-plus long war of regime change against Assad. Qatar even hosted FSA and jihadi training camps, reportedly run by the CIA and likely American Central Forces. All right, so the U.S. Gulf access is still strong despite the Gaza war, and which is also what the new defense pact demonstrates. Some analysts are saying it further prepares the U.S. Gulf access for the next round of fighting with Iran. And this is the key. This is what one Middle Eastern observer said. And this is interesting. Make no mistake, this is about the future U.S.-Israel war with Iran. In other words, its defense pact. Consider the implications. If Iran retaliates against Qatar for hosting U.S. and Israeli operations, Washington can immediately declare that an attack on Qatar is an attack on U.S. interests. From there, it's a short step to claim attack on Qatar as attack on the U.S., attack on a NATO member. Article 5 triggered, and so that gives the U.S. the right to attack Iran. There is indeed a recipe for more U.S. quagmire. This is indeed a recipe for more U.S. quagmires and foreign interventionism in the Middle East, and Congress remains silent, as has become typical. All right, here's our explanation of this. The United States is mainly interested in its much-needed strategic military base in Qatar. Israel would have never dreamed of attacking the country had not Hamas's leadership been there. With the new Trump peace plan, this agreement with Qatar would not be a problem for Israel, seeing that Hamas is going to be neutralized one way or another, either through laying down their arms or as Israel wiping them out entirely. Again, Iran is boxed into a corner, which is fascinating because recall, Iran for years and years has tried to be the major military power in the Middle East, and they have failed miserably of trying with all their surrogates, Houthis, Hamas, etc., Hezbollah, and the Islamic Jihad there in Iraq, and what they have in Syria too. All this has gone by the wayside, and this is what we would expect from Scripture because recall what we keep telling you. Iran will be in the last days an enemy of Israel, but there'll be a secondary power. It'll be Russia, the main power, who leads this last days invasion. According to Ezekiel 38:39, Iran will be there as a surrogate along with Turkey, but not the main military strength there in the Middle East. Now, we deal with this in our book, 25 Signs. We're near the end, signs 9 through 11, where we go through what's going to take place in this Ezekiel 38:39 invasion. Then we have a more thorough book on the subject, very thorough book, called the Ezekiel 38:39 invasion. They're both free downloads from our website, Educating Our World. All right, this last story is huge. This is so important we understand this. Why are there no mass protests for Hamas to accept Trump's Gaza peace plan? So the Jerusalem Post. Since the October 7th massacre, ceasefire now has been the rallying cry for activists demanding that Israel cease its military operations against Hamas in Gaza. The slogan was emblazoned on banners and street marches, stated in speeches by politicians across the world, and featured in open letters by celebrities. Activists demanded a permanent ceasefire to end hostilities, ostensibly to save the lives of civilians caught in the crossfire. Here comes the yet. Yet, after a comprehensive peace proposal was presented by President Donald Trump on Monday, and it received the backing of major Middle Eastern powers, including Turkey and Qatar, there was a silence from the ceasefire now activists. Is activists in the best case and in the best case, silence, but outright rejection at the worst. Despite Israel agreeing to a phased plan which would end the fighting, release hostages, rebuild Gaza, and lay the groundwork for moderate governance, there has been no mass protest in the streets, no flotillas, no building occupations to exert pressure on Hamas to end the war. Well, what's going on here? While the coalition of radicals and trend followers chanted ceasefire now on award stages and in city streets, supposedly they did this because they're so desperate to end a genocide. The alleged mass murder and ethnic cleansing in Gaza appeared to lose its imperative. A ceasefire is suitable to end a genocide, but apparently peace is too great a price. Activists demanded ceasefire now of Israel, but seem unwilling to demand peace now of Hamas. This is because, and here's the key, peace was never the objective. A ceasefire, even a so-called permanent ceasefire, is an end to hostilities where the battle lines lie, not a peace that is negotiated to solve the underlying points of conflict between the two parties. The most problematic point of contention between Israel and Hamas, and here we go, from the perspective of many revolutionary activists in the West, is the continued existence of the State of Israel. That's what they don't want to see, and that's why they've been protesting. That's why I've been loudly, saying this clearly around the world. The real problem is not the fighting against the Palestinian people. They could care less. It's the fact that Israel still exists. Peace would mean that, as the article goes on to say, peace would mean the tacit acceptance of the Jewish state, while ceasefire offers a respite to resume to fight another day. A ceasefire provides the opportunity for Hamas and its ilk to rearm, reorganize, recruit for a future fight. In the same level of same cycle of operations in the past. 2008, they had that. The Operation Cast Lead. 2012, Pillar of Defense. 2014, Protective Edge. 2021, Guardians on the Wall. In other words, Israel had to respond with different military operations there, and they want to see that continue to take place. But committing to a ceasefire, they will, but not to peace. And this is the whole point of the article. The commitment to a ceasefire as a first step in a belated war against Israel was made evident in January when a ceasefire and hostage deal was reached between Israel and Hamas. Activists quickly shifted their slogan. Now, get this, from ceasefire now to ceasefire today, liberation tomorrow. The problem of the peace plan was it does not allow Hamas a strategic respite, but if implemented as planned, would remove the terrorist group's ability to fight and control the Gaza Strip. Most of all, the plan would give up the dream of Israel's destruction. That's why they've been protesting, not because they care about the Palestinians. That's why they're not saying a word against Hamas, because their ultimate goal is the destruction of Israel. Activists rejected the deal's proposal to disarm Hamas because it removed the option of continual fighting. Ousting of Hamas from political control of its territory to a transitional government would likewise preclude the ability to be able to restore its former strength. Far from seeing the potential groundwork for a free and democratic Palestinian polity, activists see the resistance losing ground in a long-term war. Trump and Netanyahu call this a peace plan, but it's nothing more than a blueprint for permanent occupation, one Peace Now activist said. Disarming and decommissioning Hamas would mean the end of decades of long military campaign against Israel. There are no calls of peace now on academic campuses because that would be a call for Hamas to surrender. With peace meaning surrender and ceasefire meaning victory, the anti-Israel activists have shown that the fighting isn't the issue. The problem is, and this is so key, the problem is who is winning. Now, these observations, and this is my comment now, the observations in this story are very much eye-opening, something we have been emphasizing from the beginning of the conflict. It's not the Palestinian cause, the wanting of a just peace and the ability to have a good livelihood they're interested in for the Palestinian people. It's nothing about them because the ultimate concern is not for them, but rather for the destruction of the state of Israel. And this illustrates sign 7 and sign 21 from our book, 25 Signs. We're near the end. Sign 7, there will be a continual search for peace in Israel until the Lord Jesus returns. And sign 21, there'll be a rise in anti-Semitism. The entire world will be against Israel. Israel will be in a continual search for peace until Jesus Christ returns. And at the same time, the Muslim and the secular world will do everything in its power to cause Israel not to exist. Therefore, all the talk about peace, getting along with one another, is merely a mirage. Unless this is understood, then what is taking place in our world will never make any sense. But now it makes perfect sense, and that's why we emphasize to understand what the scripture is teaching about the time of the end. We see all these things working together. And again, these two books are free downloads from our website, Educating Our World, under the heading of Bible Prophecy. 25 Signs, we're near the end, is the book here. And again, that be signs 7 and 21 in particular here. So we see how it all works together. It's fascinating, isn't it? All these intricate things that are going on. So we'll keep you posted. Again, I'm Don Stewart. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, as always, may the Lord richly bless.